Hi everyone, thank you so much for coming. Please have a seat. Can you hear me all right? Awesome. My name's Alyx Jones. I'm the founder of Silverscript Games, and this is Kirsty Gillmore, our casting and voice director, and we're here today to talk to you about telling a challenging personal story in The Quiet Things.
This talk comes with a content warning. It will include clips from the game which depict and contain reference to self-harm, child abuse, grooming of a minor, and attempted suicide. The content is not visually graphic. However, knowing this, if you wish to leave, now would be the best time to do so.
A little bit about our studio. We're a really small team of 6. We're a micro indie studio and we work fully remotely in the UK. I founded Silverscript Games in October 2022, so we've been going about a year and a half, and our focus is on working on narrative games that tackle serious topics. And we're currently working on our first game, The Quiet Things. The Quiet Things is an autobiographical narrative game. It's my personal story. When I was a teenager, I kept a diary throughout a lot of challenging life experiences, and these form the basis for the game. It covers my life from roughly the ages of 8 to 18, so about 10 years, and the game covers really challenging themes such as childhood abuse, self-harm, suicide, sexual abuse, and homelessness. I appreciate that that's a lot of really heavy topics. There are a few autobiographical games in existence, but there's not that many. I've put these games up here as people can sometimes have this perception that games have to be fun and exciting, and I think the games industry has a lot more to offer than that. They have the ability to explore the human condition just as much as any film, TV, or book. In fact, games are more powerful because they allow you to virtually walk in someone else's shoes.
So I think we can all agree that from childhood cancer to mental health to the life of refugees, the accessible nature of indie games makes them an excellent medium to tell personal stories and create singular experiences. But how do we unflinchingly approach chronicles like these, which are based around sensitive and heavy content? How do we endeavor to investigate the corners of emotionally raw stories as honestly as possible without causing trauma to a development team or to our players? And how do we do this while working with micro indie budgets? Over the next 30 minutes or so, we're going to explore these questions and hopefully give you some insights into how you might approach similar themes for your own games. This is a short talk, so it will be quite high level. If anyone has any questions afterwards, we won't have time for a Q&A at the end, but we will both be hanging around the conference. So please come and chat to us if you'd like to.
We're going to now play the trailer for the game so you have a little bit of an idea of what we're talking about.
We're just giving you a call as your wife's not doing well. She might not have long left.
Mum, she's at the hospice though. She hasn't gone to a special place, she's just gone. It's just me and you, Wolfie. Dear Diary, my name is Alice.
What I'm about to tell you, I've never told anyone. Things just feel wrong. Everything just gets worse and worse.
It's there to remind you what happens when you disobey me.
Am I bad? Am I evil?
Look at me when I'm speaking to you.
I have to get out of here. If I don't, it will kill me.
We're just giving you a call.
Good segue. With small teams and limited budgets, I had to think really carefully about what was achievable, what key team members did I need, and what was the minimum viable product. In other words, what was the least we needed to achieve to have a decent game? As you can see, the art style is really important in these kind of games. So our team is about half artists, and the audio is also equally important. And it's also my area of expertise as the studio founder, which is relatively unusual. Dialogue is really central to telling the story, so it had to be done well. A lot of walking simulator style games like this have very limited gameplay, but the regular dialogue passages being triggered is the key that keeps you moving throughout the game. I also made the decision to have no visible characters in the game. This allows us to deal with some of the heavier themes without having actors have to reenact anything physically or indeed have players feel like it's happening to themselves. Games such as Everybody's Gone to the Rapture and the Stanley Parable, which you might be familiar with, come to mind when thinking about dialogue as a core mechanic. You simply move through the game and audio events play. Similar to Gone Home, we have a lot of objects that the player can pick up and interact with, and it plays dialogue. My diary entries lend themselves naturally to being the basis for the game in this way, as there's a lot of rich narrative that comes from them. Here's an example of the childhood diary in the game.
Dear Diary, or what should I call you? My name is Alice. That's a weird way to start a diary. At school, my teacher gave me a book about a girl called Anne Frank who kept a diary. She always started it with Dear Kitty. I'll have to think about who to write my diary to, but it's nice to talk to someone.
That glitch effect is also not part of the game, I swear. Our game runs at like 60 FPS. There also comes a challenge when working with real content that we need to safeguard the identity of everybody involved from the real events. I changed every single person's name in the game. My own is changed from Alyx to Alice. It's kind of a joke because people mishear my name sometimes, but also things like dates, places, times, anything that's identifiable is changed. With the heavy themes present, I felt that having a literal graphical representation of everything that would be like a negative experience for the player. So we instead focus on storytelling or using abstract representation, for example, like drowning to represent being overwhelmed by the weight of everything. Here's also one of the diary entries talking about the topic of self-harm.
I self-harm today. They look worse. It makes me feel stronger. I'm listening to Linkin Park. Their songs make me cry sometimes. The same songs at different times. When I feel like this, I always listen to it. It's because it's about the situation I'm in. Being lost, not knowing what to do, being afraid and saying that it's your own fault.
Interesting extra footage there with some more glitching. Another important factor I often ask is, does this need to go in the game? Ultimately, we're still constructing a video game and a curated experience from the source material. It wouldn't necessarily even be that interesting to read all my diary entries, records, and social services records, and then like school books, cover to cover. The same is true for the audio. Do we need to have sound here? What's that adding to the experience? In the game, we have the absence of music during a lot of the levels, partially because this adds to realism. You know, when you're walking around your house, there's not usually a soundtrack playing, and also because when we then do use music in the key moments, they're much more impactful and it creates contrast. The use of silence in games is sometimes underrated, but it can draw focus and shape the atmosphere. I mentioned that I use my diaries that I kept as a child and teenager, also things like my social services records, police records, things that some people might remember like an old Bebo page, and school books. When working on recalling real memories, it's very difficult to accurately remember things that happened. So using these real records and leaning on them helps to shape the overall chronology and fact check what I'm remembering. It was also really important for us to not exaggerate anything past the point of truth, because sometimes that can create problems in the media that you don't see yourself represented accurately. You get this idea in your head that someone will dramatically come running and save you, and then in real life, nobody comes. I've talked a bit about the game design and process, but I want to dive in more to the characters and dialogue because they're really central to the game. Authenticity is important to us when it comes to creating and writing the characters. Not all accents are exactly true to life, but having similar accents helps ground the character. It's not the intention to ever create an exact replica of people or events. We don't want actors to mimic the real-life people. It was more important to capture the general mood and feeling. For example, we felt that using a child actor was important, as I don't think there's any replacement for that. This is Elsie Oliver, who, let me turn my page, plays young Alice. However, we did not get the child to engage with any traumatic content, and we're really incredibly careful with the sessions and how we run them. Elsie also had her dad in the booth to help.
So as well as taking into account the fact that we were representing real people, we also had to consider how to approach casting characters who experience considerable trauma in the story and those that have a lot of emotional and sensitive dialogue. And we also had to consider how to cast characters who were abusers. There are a couple of characters in the game who are not very nice people. And what we were asking actors to do was very challenging. We needed actors to play real, complex people. These were not fictional characters. These people had done unconscionable things, but they still believed themselves to be good people. The abusers in the game definitely don't consider themselves to be villains. Two of these challenging characters were Alice's dad, Simon, and Patrick, who is Alice's foster father. Here's a clip of Alice's dad when Alice is around 13 years old.
Look at me when I'm speaking to you. I know one of you stole the bread roll. I already know who it was. I just want the person who did it to tell the truth. Here is a hot metal spoon. I'm going to hit the person across the knuckles who stole from me. See, I knew it was you. Do you know how I knew? Because you flinched. You have a guilty conscience. Do you know what's worse than a thief? A liar.
And if that voice sounds familiar, that's actor Dave Jones, who is best known as Halsin in Baldur's Gate 3. This is quite a different role from that. In the game, Alice goes to live with foster parents Patrick and his wife Carly when she is 15 years old. Patrick grooms Alice and they have a sexual relationship. Because we wanted to show an honest picture of what this situation is like, we needed the power difference between the characters of Patrick and Alice to be really clear. And as we don't ever see the characters, it was really important that the actors who played Patrick and Alice did sound like a man in his mid-30s and a teenager. This is a scene between Alice and her foster father, Patrick. In the scene, Alice is 15 years old and Patrick is 35.
How's things going with that boyfriend of yours?
Don't know. It's kind of awkward.
What's awkward?
I just don't know what to do. Like, how do you kiss someone right and not do it all wrong?
I could show you, if you like.
Some tips if you're thinking of casting and recording dialogue that contains sensitive and challenging themes. The actors need to know what they're signing up to right from the start, right from the moment you send out casting briefs or you start to look for actors for your game. Be as upfront and transparent as possible as soon as possible. You never want your actors or anyone involved in a VO recording session to be triggered by any content or feel actively uncomfortable and feel under pressure to perform dialogue that they have a strong negative emotional reaction to without any advance warning or time to prepare. Sensitive content should never come as a surprise to the actor or to anyone else in a VO recording session, or you run the risk of traumatizing people. As well as including content warnings in our castings and our scripts. We provided our scripts in advance, our dialogue scripts, to everyone who is attending any of the VO sessions. actors, recording engineers, writers, in this case Alyx, and the voice director, which was me. So that everyone who was going to be in those sessions had a chance to review the content and ask any questions in advance. We also budgeted to record around 400 words per hour for all of the scenes. This was to allow time for us to discuss the characters and the content in advance with the actors, to get the performance we required, and also for the actors and, again, everyone else in the studio to take as many breaks as they needed. It's important to be aware that every time you ask an actor to perform an emotional scene, for example, one which might require a lot of crying, you're asking them to physically commit to that moment, both physically and emotionally. To get a truthful performance, for the duration of that scene, the actor needs to be that character and feel what that character would feel in that situation, which means putting themselves potentially in a traumatic or traumatized state of mind. Asking actors to do multiple takes of emotion material is draining, and they will need time to recover because you're asking them to experience the trauma repeatedly. Every take you do, they experience it again. Whoever is doing your voice direction and whoever is directly interacting with the material will need recovery time. This is especially if you're in a VO session where you or whoever's directing is reading in for another part. If you've got sort of a multi-character scene, you're recording one actor at a time and reading in, just be aware that you're experiencing that content as well as you read in. You're experiencing the situation along with the actor. As I say, emotional content takes time, traumatic content takes recovery time.
We're going to play a clip that contains a depiction of a suicide attempt, just for a warning for you, but the content is not graphic.
I can do this. It's the only way.
Alyx, you caused all this.
I didn't mean to. I don't know how to make it right.
Everyone fucking hates you.
Everyone hates me. I'm bad. I'm evil. I have to make it right. Just be brave. Be brave. You'll be quick. Wait until there's no cars in this lane.
Alyx! Oh, fuck! Alyx!
No! No, go away!
Alyx, wait!
Shit! Stop! Don't come any closer!
No. Don't be silly now. Come on. I've stopped. I've stopped.
Turn around!
Alyx, I'll stop or I'll do whatever you need. It's on your terms. Just come back over the railings.
You can hear the level of content that various people on the team are exposed to, and not just once. For me, this is a very real event that happened, and I'm potentially reliving it over and over. I first have to think about it and recall it, then write down notes for the overall structure, then write the script. I also then build the scene in Unreal. I listen to auditions back from actors, then we go to the studio to record, then I process and edit the dialogue recordings, then I implement the dialogue, then play through the scene numerous times to test it. This is probably 20 to 30 times minimum that I've gone back over the content. But how do we protect the team from this? Firstly, there's no obligation for a lot of the team to have to be exposed to this content. While the team are generally aware of the context and have full access to scripts and game design documents, they don't have to engage with it unless they want to. The exception is probably Kirsty and the actors involved, as they do need to know the scripts. When you have this kind of content, it's best to let people decide for themselves how much to engage or when they engage, and give them choices and options. Put their well-being first at all times. It's good to offer regular check-ins with everyone. We have a Discord server that we're all on and we can talk at all times. If you have a budget for it, absolutely have a dedicated support such as a workplace counsellor, but for small teams, we often can't afford this. You could also provide resources. We use a wellbeing facilitator for recording sessions that provides support for us before, during, and after sessions. And Safe in Our World are also another great charity, and some of our team members have had free mental health first aid training with them, which is really amazing.
For those who haven't heard of a wellbeing facilitator, they're independent experts who work closely with producers and team members to support everyone in the creation of a mentally healthy production. In the creative arts, they're mainly employed, or they have been so far, for TV shoots, films, and theatre productions. Alyx and I first discussed the idea of hiring a wellbeing facilitator when we were looking at recording the heaviest dialogue of the game so far, which were the grooming scenes and the suicide attempt, which you've just seen. We thought a lot about how working closely with the content of those scenes would affect both the actors and the team members who are in the studio for those sessions. And it's those team members who carry the responsibility of dealing with any situations that occurred. For example, someone having a strong reaction to the content. Often the role of supporting actors and everyone else in the studio when you're recording challenging scenes falls to whoever's directing the session, which might be a professional voice director, or for a lot of indie games, that might be yourselves making your games, writer, sound designer, producer, creative director, one of the dev team. I know for myself, even as a very experienced voice and performance director, I've worked on over 50 titles. I don't have the skills or experience to adequately support our actors or any of our production team if they had a strong reaction to any of the dialogue we were recording, which was a real possibility, even though we gave everybody scripts in advance, because you never really know what's going to affect you until you have it in front of you. We felt strongly that we needed someone who was trained and experienced in offering mental and emotional support to creative productions. And so someone who could essentially take on that emotional support role for our recording days. 6 Feet from the Spotlight is a UK company which provides wellbeing and mental health services for the film, TV and theatre industries, and now the games industry. We've worked with 2 wellbeing facilitators from 6 Feet from the Spotlight now, who have attended some of our recording days and provided support and assistance not only on the day itself, but also afterwards. Their advice and presence really helped our team. We all felt reassured that we had someone there in the studio with us who was trained in mental health first aid and experienced in supporting performers and production staff who were working with challenging content. Without them, I think we would have all felt much more nervous about the recording days with the most challenging content. And as well as their support on those days, the advice that they provided on a mental and emotional self-care meant that we were able to recover emotionally and mentally more quickly and be better prepared for future challenging recording sessions. We believe we're one of the first game studios in the UK to use wellbeing facilitators, but hopefully not the last.
One of the biggest challenges to a lot of the things we're talking about is money. We're lucky to have grant funding for the game, but this can also be limiting, as most funds like this only cover core development, and anything related to wellbeing they don't particularly understand and won't fund. We managed to do a successful Kickstarter campaign last summer and raised a chunk of money that at least we had the power to choose how we spent it. The other option is potentially using something like video games tax relief to be able to cover this, as you can claim back 20% of your costs and then you can choose how you spend that. Another challenge is not just taking care of our team, but it's also how we take care of our players, our community. We want to be able to represent lived experiences accurately, but without inflicting trauma on our players. My story is not necessarily going to be representative of every single person's experiences with abuse or depression, and it was important to tell it in an accurate way, but I was also aware I needed to tell it in such a way that it wasn't damaging to the player. I never water down the content or censor it because I think that would defeat the point. However, we use content warnings carefully in the game to empower the player to make decisions about what they want to engage with. There's a fine line between accurate representation and reenacting damaging behaviour. What Remains of Edith Finch has a really impactful level, which if you've played it, you're beheading a fish in a canning factory over and over, and this leads to the representation of beheading yourself, but it's done in like a cartoony way. And I believe that the way that they do it, everybody remembers it because it's such a powerful scene and it's done really artistically and powerfully. By comparison, we can learn from games such as The Suicide of Rachel Foster, where the player ultimately turns on the car and leaves it running and then ultimately dies. And this got a lot of negative reviews, and people did not like having to do that, and it doesn't really add anything to the narrative either. So it's almost just there for shock value, or perhaps at the least poor judgment. And that's not to throw shade on any particular game, it's just an example of how suicide can be dealt with in two different ways that leads to a positive or a negative experience for the player.
If you do want to provide well-being or mental health support for your team, you may need to look at alternative funding. We recommend you consider the possibilities as early in development as you can, so you can either budget for well-being or mental health support, look into how you can address those needs in alternative ways, or potentially adjust the content of your game. As Alyx said earlier, consider why you're including traumatic or challenging content, and if you really need to do so to tell your story. When including another lesson to take forward, when including challenging content in games, allow the player agency so they can choose what content they engage with. For example, in The Quiet Things, players can pause the game at any time. There are content warnings, and we plan on including options for the player to decide to opt out of certain content in the game setup. For example, they could decide to opt out of anything related to self-harm. Ultimately, transparent communication is key. We wouldn't have been able to get the commitment of our development team and the performance from our actors if we weren't completely upfront about the themes of the game and what we were trying to create from the start. So in conclusion, if we hadn't prioritized safeguarding supporting our team through creating a supportive team environment and providing resources such as a wellbeing facilitator, and prioritize supporting our players through our creative design and narrative decisions and allowing player agency, I don't believe we would have been able to create this game without causing trauma to our team and to our players. Hopefully, we've demonstrated that it is possible to create games with challenging and sensitive themes while being mindful of and minimizing the amount of trauma experienced by your team and players. But it has to be a core consideration, not an afterthought.
We'd like to finish by highlighting some really useful resources for anyone working on sensitive, emotional, or intimate themes in their games, or anyone interested in supporting their team's mental and emotional health. Safe in Our World are really great and have a comprehensive list of mental health resources. Take This is a mental health advocacy group in the games industry that focuses on raising awareness and providing education around mental health, and has an excellent list of mental health resources that covers several different countries. The number for Samaritans is also on the board, and they're open 24/7. There's our website, and if you're at all interested in following the game, you can wishlist it on Steam and be notified when it's released. Thank you so much for coming to our talk. I hope it was helpful.
Thank you.